What's happening, traders? Welcome back to basically the continuation of my scalping session, which took place earlier during the London Open. Today it is Thursday, April 30th, and currently we are at 12:42 p.m. Central Summer European Time. I just had a little bit more free time on my hands, so decided to have another look at the Treasury Bonds. Well, obviously we can see immediately from the volume profile where previously price had a little bit of, troubles, right? Pushing through. Well, obviously in the meantime, it did push through. It reached a level where currently there is another battle going on. And we can see somewhat similar here on the 10-year. And basically on the 10-year, the price is currently trading around the current highs. Now I do see that the buyers basically tested this level, and suddenly we had a huge amount of contract printed here from the sell side. And like I mentioned in a previous video, looking at the context, right, this big number 2500-ish in the inside print, it can either be sellers, attacking, or it can be, let's say a buyer who bought around these levels, pushed the price higher, and at some point, the price comes to a halt, and, there will be another potential battle up here after especially the high was broken earlier. And if the buyer, notices that, okay, now there is no longer an army behind them to push the price higher, he can either, put limit orders at this year level, but if he sees just 2 contracts printed, he may, get out via market orders and then place limit orders here. So basically these numbers can be, from just one buyer, right, who got rid of his contracts here, and eventually it could motivate the sellers obviously to step in as well. But those are all just potential scenarios. That's why it is very important to keep an eye on how the passive versus active participants interact with each other, while keeping, in mind that we have to look at the context. And now we do see a big number here printed. Now, for example, yes, it can be buyers who are stepping in, taking market orders, defending that level. However, it can be also, let's say, a seller, right, who started to sell here. And if he cannot break that, a step in the volume profile to, let's say, come here and test the pressure point, it can get rid of his contracts, obviously, by taking market orders, and those will be also printed here. So yeah, it can be a seller who got in here, getting out with market orders, but it can be also be buyers, right? And especially if, let's say, again, for example, the previous example I showed you, if it was a buyer here, he has no longer a follow through, no new money willing to, break out the new highs here. He sees the attack is weakening, so basically he takes market orders, and then immediately, as soon as the buyers start to attack, he then unloads the rest of his potential inventory via limit orders, right? Now, that obviously may cause for the price to tick down a couple of ticks, so perhaps he can, at some point, the same buyer who got out, right? He can start to accumulate new inventory to eventually, perhaps generate another breakout of those highs, right? Because if, he notices that those couple of ticks, to the downside at 65, 60, 55, were basically due to his exiting, right? Then he knows already that, okay, interesting, there are potentially not many sellers who are willing to step in and, drive the market lower. Now, obviously, he would like to confirm that. That's why he will start to test this year ask level, right? And now he sees, okay, we do have a small reaction, and suddenly, yes, we do have additional market orders taken, but the buyers absorbs and starts to attack this year ask level, right? So now the sellers attack with 10 contracts. Let's see how the buyer will test or attack this level as soon as he has, accumulated probably a little bit more inventory. Now, at some point, he may even pull out like he did just now, right? To accumulate faster and immediately, take market orders, right? So now he immediately took over control of that level, right? And now the sellers are getting a little bit of, back down, as in, okay, we were unable to push through to reach that pressure point. Now the buyer is taking more. Let me try to catch a quick scalping of one tick here on the 30-year. Right, we can see that this here 155 level definitely holds. The volume profile is getting thicker, right? However, we have to be cautious because just looking at these two price levels, yeah, we can see that there were more, sell contracts printed on the left side in comparison with on the right side, which represents buy orders, right? However, again, this can be a buyer getting rid of his inventory. So, okay. Now again, obviously, after absorption took place and the buyer here basically took control over that level, right? And the attack of the sellers are weakening. He will just test this level with small orders, and look at this. We have an immediate reaction of the sellers with larger orders, and that is probably the strategy of this year participant who is silently absorbing through hidden liquidity, right, with an iceberg order. And we would like to see, however, some backticking. That is not happening, and because of that, probably the sellers attack even more. But we don't see this year bid level getting any reduced, or contracts being pulled out or whatever. Instead, it keeps reloading with new limit orders, right? Every now and then, yeah, he may pull out some orders, right, to engage more sellers. And after they do, the buyer absorbs, and now again test this level. And look at this, right? We had a couple of thousand, contracts pulled. The majority pulled out after 600 contracts were printed here. And now the buyer basically cleared that level. Now the sellers may deliberately reduce their contracts to see if the buyer will attack, and he definitely did, right? Now, unfortunately, my position on the 30-year did not get triggered. However, I will leave my limit order for the time being, because if that buyer who earlier bought here, got out here, and after noticing that there is no real follow-through of basically his aggressiveness provided on the sell side by exiting his positions, then yeah, he may accumulate new positions, gradually, lift the offer, right? While keep sellers engaged, so he can even, accumulate more inventory. And when the price reaches here, all those sellers who basically were hoping for that potential breakout of this year volume step at 155, they will cover as well, right? And at some point, if new buyers also tend to enter the market with new money, then, the move basically will feed itself at that point. But before we get there, obviously, this is not the mini S&P where it all can happen within a blink of an eye. It's obviously way faster than the Treasury bonds, but on the Treasury bonds, it can obviously, take some time. Now we do see that buyers are currently the aggressors. They did not, however, take control over this level as of yet. But where this absorption took place here, yeah, they definitely took over control, and the level after that, one tick higher as well. And now we can see that the buyer again is gradually, adding contracts or, increases his position size to see how the sellers will react, obviously. And hopefully to keep them engaged longer. Let me cancel my buy position on the 30-year. Okay, you know what? I will sacrifice a tick. Okay, so on the 30-year, we do see that the sellers just took over control over that level. And we do see somewhat similar on the 10-year. So at the current price, sellers are dominating here on the 30-year as well. We do see, however, a very small test. Actually, it's just, one contract. Smaller. It doesn't get any smaller than that, right? But we don't see any sellers engaging so far. So let's see. Okay, something just changed, so let me cancel my short position before it gets triggered and price continues higher, because I already see, that the buyers are getting a little bit more courageous, right? And there you go. Right. So glad I saw that. And because of that, I was able to, react based on the information the order book was providing me. Now, again, my buy position unfortunately did not get triggered. Okay. Now we can see obviously that something changed in the limit order columns, right? So suddenly we have very little contracts showing at the bid-ask level, a couple of block trades right above and below it. Okay. Now, if the sellers attack and this level here gets cleared deliberately, not because sellers clear that level, but because the buyer pulls out, right? And we have immediately a larger number here in comparison with the previous attack, which is currently occurring by the sellers, then I could consider entering a buy position on the 30-year. So let's see. Right, so the buyers so far are holding their ground. And if the attack is no longer engaged by the sellers, he may even pull out deliberately. There you go. He is just flashing smaller numbers every now and then. Okay, now we immediately got a... Yeah. So now let's see if the breakout will indeed occur. Well, now the conditions are no longer ideal for me with, minimum risk in mind. So I just canceled my buy limit order. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. I will go with a buy order. But I will have my mouse ready, hovering over my exit. If the price, turns around, it should not, looking at, at the buyers were basically the dominant participants over the 60 and 50 level. However, we have no real follow through on the 10-year, and now we do see somewhat of an action, but I also see a little bit of absorption. So let's see if the buyers are able to print here at the 280 level on the 30-year. Okay. This is a little bit tricky to do, obviously, because if the breakout continues, I can be in a lot of trouble. If I suddenly do get surprised by any kind of, price fluctuation. So, okay, my short position did got triggered. Just one contract printed so far. I do, however, see on the 10-year that, okay, the sellers just took over after absorption took place, so that is good to see. And now the sellers also took over on the 30-year over this year 270 level, which is also my entry for my short position. And let's see. Okay, right. So luckily my short position got filled. So far so good, guys and ladies, of course, if you are also watching. Okay, so another thing to keep in mind, if the buyer who bought here, exited here, and again accumulated contracts here, if he plans a breakout, then, he will not do that during the first attempts, right? He will keep sellers engaged so he can accumulate, more inventory. Plus, other than that, he cannot show his hand. Otherwise, it will cause him for early exit and, kind of uncovers his strategy. And most time, they want to benefit without others benefiting from it, if that makes sense, right? So basically, he may also, like I mentioned, at some point pull out some contracts to keep the sellers engaged, but also to scare off buyers who are planning to, hop along the ride. Okay, so from the looks of it, either the buyer who again accumulated here is getting rid of his positions, or it can be the sellers who are stepping in, obviously. And again, I cannot say it enough. Context matters. And, we can read the order flow and just, look at it from different angles. And there where needed, apply game theory and always, on the watch for those liquidity games. Okay, I just canceled my sell order in case it get triggered first, but luckily it did not. So looking at the 30-year, the buyers currently are in control over this year price level at 260. And at the 10-year, we see the same at the current price level, 170. Buyers are in control. However, they are not testing this year level. And I do see that the buyers at 30-year current bid level pulled out some contracts, and when they noticed that sellers did not engage, right, they are now again testing with small size to see how this level will react, plus to keep the sellers engaged, right? Because his idea is, okay, they did not attack when I basically pulled out, reduced my position size here, right? So he attacks with small portions. So the sellers think, well, let's just, attack more because it was just a weak attack, right? Well, luckily in the meantime, my position also got filled. And now let's keep an eye on this here. And also, these are the moments that I basically don't want to jump in front of a train, because, yeah, I do see, bullish power, pressure. I do see absorption. I will try to catch a limit order here. If the sellers decide, to cross the spread and test this level here. However, I should consider in sacrificing a tick, but then it is less attractive to me, because if I do get triggered here, I can use this here 260 level as my protection point. And there you go, right? Wow, it's nice to see some action, liveliness in the Treasury Bond like that. Kind of reminds me of ES whenever that happens. But, obviously ES is a different animal, different beast. Okay. Now we do see some volume profile thickening here, right? So the breakout happened with, 963 contracts. It became smaller, and then eventually, in comparison with the previous two ticks, we do see that there is obviously a lot more going on at this year 300 price level, as on the 10-year at the 190 price level. Now, even though we do see absorption, right, currently, we got to keep in mind that we just came from a bullish momentum move, right? If we look at the inside print, we see more blue than red. And the same goes for the 10-year, plus we see bigger numbers on the blue side, right? And even if we do see absorption, right? If the sellers do not, backtick and, let's say, cross this year 290 level and test this year 280 level, then obviously, that momentum may continue, right? So do not jump immediately blindly into a sell position as soon as the volume profile thickens. Yeah, it may work from time to time if, buyers are exiting their positions, and you can perhaps try to catch one tick, two tick. But usually, if there is a moving train, it's very hard to stop it at once, right? It stops gradually. So we would like to see at least some kind of exhaustion happening at these levels, right? At the current high, before considering, in any case, long-term short positions, right? even if you catch them tick by tick, right? To get somewhat of a direction of the order flow that basically then has changed from bullish momentum to, bearish pressure. So yeah, the price may continue higher after, coming to an halt. And that's why absorption on itself, without any backtaking especially, does not mean that, okay, the price will reverse, right? We do need somewhat of a confirmation that, through absorption, backtaking, exhaustion, and, sellers taking over control at the highs, becoming the aggressors, and keeping context in mind, obviously, right? So all those factors can determine, a better decision-making process. Currently, I do see that the buyers still controlling the current price level, right? The sellers are not even taking the initiative to test these levels. I also see a lot of absorption on the 10-year, even though, yes, the sellers are currently in control. Let's see if the buyers will start to attack this year level. Now I will try to catch a buy position here because I already see the sellers weakening their attack here. I see here just a small contract printed, while the buyers are trying to clear this year level. So, okay, we do have a tick lower on the 10-year. Should that reflect on the 30-year? My position should get triggered. Now, why do I consider taking a limit order here? Because this is basically that, lower volume node in comparison with the previous step below it. So should my buy position get triggered, okay, another aggressive attack and absorption, right? Let me try to go for 2 ticks, but obviously if I do see some resistance from the sellers, I could consider, moving my take profit to 1 tick. So no problems there. I also see that absorption took place here. Now the reason why I took my limit order is because now this level can somewhat act as my protection point, right? Now, even though the sellers are the aggressors, right, and currently in control over that price level, from an aggressive point of view, the buyers definitely absorbed everything, right? So aggression on itself does not mean anything if there is no follow through. And, if the buyers line up here and even, start to test this year 290 level at the ask, should be interesting what the reaction of those sellers will be then, if they pull out or... Now, obviously, there will always at the current bid and ask level, some pulling out and, some stacking, some absorption. So that's why we have to look at the big picture. Okay. Yeah, the sellers are becoming more and more aggressive. So let me try to exit at my entry point. Okay, wait a minute. Yep, okay. I will just go for 1 tick Now I do see the buyers are stepping in. Okay. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Because the actual high volume node is at 260, but I am getting out, guys. I will take one tick loss. Yep, there we go. Okay. Yep. Re-enter at this level because of what just happened. It happened so fast. Let me again go for just one tick and also try to catch a short position. At my exit point. Now, if there are still buyers who are willing to take, the risk of putting market orders and go for that breakout, my short position should, also get triggered while my exit for my current buy, right? Because at this point, yeah, we see a lot more red and bigger numbers, right? So, and again, it may due to the fact that yes, sellers stepped in, but also that buyers are getting out, taking market orders there where their limit orders are not getting filled, right? Passively. Okay. Let me center the DOMs for a second. Right, so basically that was my first loss, sacrificed tick back to the market, but that's fine, it's part of the game. Okay, we just had a pretty aggressive attack from the buyers. Yeah, so currently, at least over at the 10-year, the buyers are the aggressors. However, I also see that sellers so far managed to absorb it, and now they cleared that level and immediately reload it. Now, unfortunately, that was not enough on the 30-year, that move, to exit my position and trigger my short position. And I also do see that the sellers were in control. However, now I again do see buyers step in, willing to defend that level, and that volume profile is also thickening. So if sellers at some point start to puke out, it should eventually, rotate the price back higher. Okay, this is very nice. Right, so sellers are now not printing anything here. They are in control of the current price level. And I do see a little bit of absorption going on over at the 10-year. Plus, the buyers are the aggressors. So I do see a couple of factors that gives me the confidence not to exit my position as of yet. But let's see if the strategy will play out, because if not, then obviously we have to adapt, right? Now, even though there is a small amount of sellers testing this level here, let's see. Okay. That I do like, because that shows me that buyers took over control at 250 and currently are in control at 260. While becoming the aggressors, they took over control. So let's see if the sellers are willing to react to that move. Well, they did, but not enough to scare off buyers, obviously. And look at this, right? After the buyers again tested with just a small amount of contracts, the ask level, immediate attack from the sellers, and now look, again, a lot of absorption is taking place. Now at the 10-year, we can see it is happening at the 170 level, which is, that's a higher volume node in comparison with the 2 ticks below and the 2 ticks above, before those steps occur, so to say. And here we see again a lot of absorption, right? So the same basically as what is happening at the 30-year, and look at these bids, right? So far there is absolutely no reason to panic, as long as absorption takes place and the buyers every now and then, test the sellers. That would tell me that this move is deliberate, engineered to keep the counterparty, in this case the sellers, engaged, right? And there you go, boom, right? So that kind of, confirms what I had in mind about how to play out this strategy. They were able basically to clear that level immediately with, smaller contracts than there was, placed on the ask level. Now on the 10-year, we do see that the buyers were able to tick one tick higher, took over control over 175, and now they are basically attacking the 180 level. Currently they are also in control over this year price level, and they did that by also becoming the aggressors, right? Let's see how it will play out. So that's why when the price was I believe 2 ticks against me, I did not panic, because, the order book showed me how a passive participant was basically manipulating the price ladder, right? The order book, or DOM, right? Depth of market, to, induce sellers, to lure them into thinking that, every time he pulls the price out to get in at better prices, and there was no real follow through, and he took over control, came the aggressor in the process. But, every time he executed basically the strategy in perfection, right? Like they do. And that gave me the confidence to, hold on to my position. And that is the benefit of whenever you are trading, the order book. Because as we can see, evidently, this is where the actual battle happens, right? Nothing lagging about it. This is real-time information, and it's the raw market. And there you go. Come on, boys. Yes. Okay, why? That was a very nice move indeed. Okay. Now let's see if there will be any kind of follow through. I think I was just half a second too late. Now I am holding my mouse at the 270 ask level on the 30-year, but I am looking with my eyes to the 10-year. Okay. Something interesting happens on the 30-year. So as soon as sellers start to line up, I should try to trade into what is now basically my entry for a buy position. But let's see if I can catch a short before the price gets to my entry at 260, because then it will basically be my exit, right? Now I do see a little bit of absorption on the 30-year, right, at the current bid level. Yep, here we go. I do believe I reacted pretty quickly when it was below the 100 contracts, so should it tick down like it does here? Should, obviously, then. I do see. So I have to be cautious, yep. Let me try to get out at my entry point. Let's see how the 30-year reacts though, because otherwise I will cancel my exit. In fact, I will do it just right now. Just in case. Because here I do see that the sellers are controlling. Okay, they just also became the aggressors. Okay, that reloading action is actually what I didn't want it to see. That's why as soon as the buyers start to print here, I will try again to exit my position like that. Even though it's just to test that level, because we already know that the momentum favors the buy side, right? Yeah, so they keep absorbing, and now they deliberately pull out those contracts here to see if the sellers will engage. Nothing at all here. On the 10-year, they do engage, but we do see absorption, and they tend to hold control over that price level. So should that reflect here also? Okay. Let me be ready just in case, because I do see a shift. Yeah, I will just get out of my entry point, at least try to, because yeah. Okay, here we go. Now you see how easy the sellers clip through these price levels after passing this year 270 level, right? So I missed that sell position here, but as soon as I see an opportunity, a weakness of the sellers for a potential quick scalp to the upside, I will try to catch that move. At least until it comes here again to that, high volume node at 270. But I will preferably wait until buyers start to load up here after, an aggressive attack. Because, yeah, I can, consider taking a limit order here. But if that momentum continues, we have that lower volume node step below the current, where the price is, right? So could be a little bit dangerous. Yeah, I think, yeah. You see, that's why it immediately came to that lower volume node here. And that's why I was waiting for a little bit more confirmation instead of, jumping in front of a train, basically. And now that the price has, reached this year 220 level, okay, I can obviously try to make an entry like that, right? And then this 220 level could act as my protection point, because I already see that the attacks are becoming weaker at the 30-year, and also on the 10-year here, right? Buyers took over control, the same here. And now they are basically testing the sellers if they are still there. From the looks of it, at the 10-year, they are, but the buyer is definitely absorbing the attack of the sellers currently. Now, unfortunately, on the 30-year, the price did not take down one tick lower. Okay, now it did, and immediately I got out. Wow, that is very nice to see. Because it went so fast that, after my position got triggered, that the buyers cleared that level immediately. Now, obviously, I could have held on to my position to see what will happen here. But I rather catch that tick, guarantee my profit, and reassess what is happening, because you know, if that momentum still tends to continue at some point, then yeah, I could be on the wrong side. Now, obviously, we don't want that, but look at how quickly the price rotated back higher by basically clipping through these levels without clearing the total amount of contracts which were advertised, right? So that means that sellers were pulling out, and that is why I should try to catch an additional buy position here. A weak attack. That is not something that you would like to see. I'd like to see that momentum keep going, continuing, but this again being liquidity games, right? Okay, at least I do see some absorption going on. Plus, when the sellers clear that level, they are also attacking. By they, I do mean the buyers, to keep control over that level, which they just did, took over control. Now the sellers are attacking, the buyers immediately took over control. So they are definitely there, present, right? They are not testing this level here, but as of yet, right? We will see though, because this looks to me yet again like a iceberg order. So that bearish move to the downside, right? Probably someone has, you know, the intention to accumulate probably around these here price levels silently. Yeah, you see, so as soon as he pulls out, no sellers print here, he again starts to reload. Now look at this, right? So he takes minor market orders, right? And that is also something of a cue for a passive buyer who is accumulating inventory. He will pull out and preferably try to collect inventory via passively absorbing. But if he notices that the sellers are not engaging, then he will actively, you know, take market orders, small portions, right, to both control the pace of selling exhaustion, but also to, you know, collect more inventory. Now, price is currently 2 ticks against me. I do see, however, again, a reaction of the buyers on the 10-year. So there is still a buyer here, right? Which gives me the confidence to hold on to my position a little bit longer. In the meantime, the price ticked 1 tick higher, and we do see that the sellers, right? So if the buyer now notices that, he will again test this level here with small amounts, right? To see if the sellers will take larger orders here, so he can accumulate via limit orders passively. But if the sellers do not engage or do engage and he collects here, at some point, again, he will take market orders gradually, like he's doing now, to basically, control the pace of, you know, selling exhaustion. Very important. And look at this, 126 contracts after absorption, immediately the price level cleared, and he is again lining up here now via limit orders, right? So, and at the 10-year, we do see that at the current price level, 170, the buyers definitely took over control and became the aggressors as well. Now we still have obviously some sellers here who are trying to, well, if they have entered, let's say at 170 this year level, and they have a stop loss at 180, they will now, you know, put in the effort to defend those levels, right? to keep in control. But you know, the sellers are the aggressors, but does not mean that the price will continue lower. Now, obviously, it may go down every now and then one tick, but again, that is basically the buyer, right? Okay. Yep. Buyers took over control. Sellers are still engaging, but the buyer takes gradually again market orders, right? So let's see if he can clear this level. Okay. A little bit more, and immediately we saw a lot of contracts pulling out, and there you go, right? So again, he cleared that level. And now the attack, well, willing to defend that level at least, became obviously smaller. Now we have on the 30-year, the buyers currently are in control over this year price level. After again taking control here, where price, you know, failed to go lower, took over control, became the aggressors, now took over control. Let's see if they can also become the aggressors here. And if now the sellers are unable to defend this level, which the buyer obviously knows who accumulated lower, if they, you know, cannot defend that level, or if they are not willing to take, you know, the defense of that level, right, then they may puke out, and then the price may rotate a little bit higher, which should trigger my exit at that point. But let's see. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just a test of this level here, and look at this here over at the 10-year, right? So absorption does takes place. The buyers do, however, clear that level. So if those sellers who had entered at 175, 170 eventually puke out, we should also see some contracts printed here. If their stop loss, you know, is about at 180, right? Because those stop orders will become market orders, which also will help the buy side. Okay, interesting. And it should trigger my position, and there you go. Any second, I wanted to say, but okay. Mm-hmm. Let me try to catch a buy position here. And I will take a break after another position gets filled. In the meantime, we are well into 1 hour and 5 minutes. So okay, we'll just go for one tick though. Okay, so we do see a little bit of sellers stepping in on both the 10-year and 30-year, but there are still some buyers willing to engage, at least to test those levels, right? So, but again, with just a small amount of contracts every time, and if that is yet again to, lure, let's say, new wave of sellers into selling, right? It's very possible that the buyer here may even pull out the majority of his contracts, and yeah, so he just absorbed an additional couple of thousands of contracts here. And let's see if he starts to backtick, and if that happens, how this year level reacts. So he is indeed backticking. No immediate reaction from the sellers though. And on a 30-year, there was also absorption, and yeah, eventually the price indeed did tick higher. So that's nice. Well, like I said, guys, I'm going to take yet another break, trading in stages throughout the day. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting session. Made a additional 2K on top of the previous profits which were made during the London Open session. And I will have a look later if I can trade also during the New York session, if there is interesting price action going on. So perhaps you guys will catch, a third video later today, but for now, let's just keep it with 2. And if I decided to trade, then you guys will know it. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video, pick something up along the way. If you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to ask me in the comment section below. Trade safe, and as always, stay blessed. Catch you later. Bye.